Hi, everyone. I'm happy to virtually welcome you all to today's Ad Art Show 2020 Lunchtime POV from MVVO Art. My name is Emily Anastasia from the MVVO Art team. It is my pleasure to introduce today's show titled Creativity Ambassadors in the Ad Industry, which is hosted by Bennett, principal of Aerialist and co-founder of 600 and Rising, featuring Beth and Kaminkow, global CEO of Geometry, and Pete Favat, creative chairman of Deutsch LA. Welcome, everyone. Let's get started.
Hello.
Hey, good. Happy Tuesday, everybody. It's weird when you have it's such a short week. You almost forget what's a Monday, what's a Tuesday. But here we are. We're almost already midway through the week, and I'm excited to have these two very awesome creative executives and wonderful ambassadors of creativity in the advertising space. Beth Ann and Pete. So for all those who are not really familiar with the agencies that they represent or the individuals in the room, I'd love for each of you to give just a brief introduction. Beth Ann, you can start with you.
Thank you, Bennett. Thank you for having me and hosting us here. I am the global CEO, as you mentioned, of Geometry, which is part of the WPP network. We are the creative commerce agency, so we can talk a little bit about what creativity inserted into the area of commerce is all about. And I've spent years in the kind of retail commerce, reimagining the future of retail place for a good part of my career. I was a global CMO at Westfield, and I was at Tracy Locke as the first female CEO there, and then went on to Cantor Consulting. So I'll draw from all those experiences in our conversation today.
That's awesome. Thank you. And your turn, Pete.
And I'm Pete Favat, creative chairman of Deutsche LA. We're out here in Playa Vista. Actually, we're all in our houses. I wanted to change the name to Deutsch at Home, which is basically what we're all doing right now. But I oversee all new business, design, production, and all of our day-to-day clients, which include Taco Bell. We work with Walmart. We're working with Lowe's. We work with a lot of different clients, a lot of diverse clients. And we are right now about 350 to 350 people out here in LA. We're getting through this pandemic pretty well too, I gotta say. We've adapted really, really quickly. I'm really proud of our agency for being able to do that.
That's great. Yeah, I know there's a lot of just weird unrest with the fires happening as well throughout California. So I hope everybody's staying safe and staying well ventilated out there as well. Yeah. So would love to at least start with with a simple question for both of you. You both hold these really awesome C-suite titles and running fairly large agencies or networks. So I'm curious, how do you create an agency-wide environment that inspires creativity?
You want me to lead off there? Okay. Well, it's a great question, and it's one that's always top of mind and one that we're always thinking about. I love to think that in our place, we've got a lot of different departments, from analytics to strategy to design to production. But I always like to say that ideas come from everywhere, and I like to think of our agency as really a bit more of an idea consultancy, if you will. Because I think that effective creativity comes out of understanding our clients' business, what's going to impact their business. And a lot of times, I've heard through my career, well, you're not in the creative department, so that's not your responsibility to come up with ideas. And I always felt bummed out because I was really never the first person ever picked to be on a kickball, and I always feel bad for second class status in companies or in life. And I've seen firsthand that when you open up your company and look beyond the creative department for ideas, it's amazing what you'll find. And it's kind of unfortunate in a way that there's something called the creative department, because I've always felt in every company, everyone should be creative. When you walk through the door, either if you're in finance or you're in production or you're a writer or an art director, ideas are something that we're supposed to bring every day. So I think what we do is we try to inspire people to always be bringing solutions, no matter where you are. And also our leaders, whether you be a creative leader or production or strategy leader, to be looking for those ideas, no matter where they come. And I think what that does is it gives people a lot of the ownership in the creative thinking, and it doesn't exclude people from that process. And I say the same thing to our clients too. I mentioned earlier when we were talking that I never did well in school with final exams, and I always feel like when you go to a client and you take time to come up with ideas and you just present it, you throw it on the table without them knowing anything about what you're going to show, it's kind of a mistake because you're not working together. So the other thing that I foster heavily with our clients is this open collaboration. So bring clients in early on our creative thinking. Don't wait for it to be the big voila moment, and bring them in so they have ownership of the ideas as well. So those are two things that I like to be behind and be fostering.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Pete is saying. And I think he also speaks to the changes that are taking place in our industry right now. So I'll start by answering from a WPP perspective. All of WPP thinks of itself as a creative transformation company. And one of the notions behind that is that it's not just about a big idea. It's actually about how creativity manifests itself in business today. And I think that opens up the terrain that we all get to play on in really kind of inspiring ways. And it also then invites us as so many different kinds of professionals to contribute to the creative process in different ways. And recognizing that creativity today has a role to play in how we really change our lives. You know, when you think about how you make people feel, how we behave, how we purchase, how so much of what we do is engaged, incentivized, approached, has a creativity element at the heart of it today. So in how we think about those solutions. And then as I mentioned specifically as Geometry, we're a creative commerce agency. So it's also recognizing that commerce is this incredibly powerful channel today and channels. And it gives us a chance to go from what was transactional into something that's very emotional and elevated to creativity as this experience, as this engagement, as this very fulfilling element of our lives as well. So it does mean in an organization that one, creativity does have to be, I guess, really wired in your DNA, and it is not departmental anymore. It's about just the ways that we all come together to approach the work.
Yeah. It's not lost on me that this year's Ad Art Show happens to be in one of the more commercial parts of New York, in the Westfield Oculus, and it's been such an interesting merger of creativity meets commerce, period. So I appreciate your thought, Beth, and as well as Pete's on that end. So, given that this show is, built for individuals who work in the advertising space, making sure that you have, top creative talent, regardless of discipline, right, to hire. So my question for both of you is, how do you feel that ad agencies can best find this top creative talent?
Boy, you do everything you possibly can. You look everywhere. You really, a lot of times, what I've played on and what we do is we use a lot more LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
We use a lot more services that are springing up because, right now the issue is how do you create the most diverse company you possibly can. And we do. It's like we said earlier. We're doing well, but we can always do better. But I think I think for nowadays, what's interesting about this pandemic is geography used to be a bigger border for companies, or a bigger barrier. I mean, and it's interesting because I've never wanted geography to play a barrier role. But I think it's really interesting what's happened now is that we found that people don't need to come and live in the city where the company is. We're only one office in LA. So, but now because of this, we've really opened our eyes to the fact that, hey, you know what? We can have people living all over the place. So it kind of opens it up a bit for us as far as the people that we can talk to and the people that we can hire.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is that diversity is obviously factoring in a way that it probably always should have, but I think in a way that has more accountability behind it now.
Yep.
Also because we know, we tangibly, quantifiably know that it is what's good for business. It's the only way that you can get to more holistic, more resonating thinking in the creative work that you produce. And so I think we're doing a lot more to just look everywhere, recognizing we were talking about before we started the conversation formally, we started talking about our own backgrounds and how you really think about a creative person. And I am one of those believers that, sort of creativity exists within all of us. And so I think it's being less rigid about how we look at backgrounds and how we even look at portfolios to create nurturing environments and places where people will thrive and flourish. And you bring people in earlier on and you start to create those relationships, even with high school level people who are in the arts or are interested and fulfilled through different kinds of passions. And you start to cultivate them as potential talent for our industry. So I think that's a really big part of it is just looking in places that we maybe wouldn't have looked before. We're relying a lot less, I will be honest, from recruiters, and we're following much more of our own kind of instinct and relationship building and outreach to more non-traditional places. And in London, they have exceptional mentorship type programs too that are very focused on people from very diverse backgrounds and have had very unfortunate backgrounds. And oftentimes, some of that talent is the most creative, and they just need more structure and more tutelage that get them really thinking about it in terms of the application into our work and our environment. So those are the linkages that we're really trying to build at Geometry. And I think hopefully the work will, speak to that as well. And then the last thing that Pete said too is just, the need to build pipelines always. Like we're always looking for talent. It's not even a cyclical thing anymore. It's just a continuous journey of looking for people who really show the passion, the interest, and then the work starts to, manifest from that.
I couldn't agree more. It's, Beth Ann, it's as far as like what you just said, and we're involved in a bunch of different programs. Film to Future is one, but also I'm extremely curious about the idea of high school kids. And I always relate back to, now I know he was a very special individual, but Kobe Bryant went from high school to NBA. There's kids out there, and I was one of them. I mean, I spent all my time in high school just drawing and doing graphic design and painting. I think that there's a lot of talents, writing and designing talents that we could probably pull from high schools that don't necessarily need to go to university. But we all know that the student debt that's accumulating in this next generation coming up is overwhelming. And there's a lot of things that kids can be taught right out of high school in an ad agency and get to work right away. They can start making money right away and producing work right away. Whereas you don't, I love SVA, I love Newhouse where you went. There's a lot of good schools, but I don't necessarily agree that every kid needs to go to university. I think that some kids can, it goes way back to ancient periods, and it's apprenticeships. It just goes right back to the old school way of doing it. And high schools identifying kids who show promise and connecting them into companies like ours and yours, Beth Ann, that you could take a kid right out of high school, start paying them, put them underneath a designer or a writer, and they can start learning on the job and making money. And mom and dad or they don't have student debt accumulated. And instead, it's the other way. They start making money as opposed to paying.
Yeah, I really respect that back half of the answer from both of you. Really quick shout out to two high schools that are actually dedicated to careers in advertising, based in New York City. There's Mecca, the Manhattan Early College School for Advertising, and out in Canarsie, there's IM, the High School for Innovation in Advertising and Media. So shout out to all those students who are probably beginning virtual classes all over again this year, and can't wait to interact with you all as the semesters go on. So we talked about, I guess, one part of the creative talent conversation, and that's getting them in the door. What strategies enable, the good agencies better, the great agencies better than the good agencies in keeping that creative talent and, enabling them to feel like, they can be the next Andy Warhol of the ad industry, so to speak.
Well, it's fun. I'll jump in. We have a cadence going, so I'll just jump in. And Bennett, I don't know if last week you knew that we had Shepard Ferry come in.
Yeah, I've been to that conversation.
I've been friends with Shepard for 20 odd years, and the guy's remarkable. He's a remarkable human being and a remarkable artist. One of the things that we do is have every month we have different inspirational speakers come in to talk to our young people, to talk about where they came from. Last month was Demaine Davis, before Shepard, who was one of my favorite creative directors back when I had my own agency. And now she's off, she's directing Self-Made, and she's become a big TV director. And I'm so proud of her. But we have people come in and talk to us about their path, about their journey, about how they were in advertising, but how they parlayed their advertising into other things. As you said, Andy Warhol was originally started as an illustrator in advertising. There's countless amounts of people who've gone on to other things other than advertising. And I think that what we try to do is keep people inspired. The other thing that we try to do is keep it, work in smaller groups, smaller teams. Classically, agencies have gone and, they bring in hundreds of people to work on creative ideas. And I don't know, I feel like that pretty much says, you don't trust that any one of these people is going to come up with it. I'd rather take a small group of people, let them understand that this is their responsibility and their opportunity to shine, and guide these small teams to getting to the right solution, rather than just opening it up and bringing in tons of people to farm for ideas. So I think when people feel that they have a shot, they have a chance, they have a real opportunity, they tend to stick around, and it tends to become contagious.
Yeah. Once again, Pete, no disagreement here. The things that we have done as an agency, one is, putting creativity at the heart of everything that we do. So sometimes companies will speak the language, but not walk the walk. And so what we've really tried to do is make sure that there's always that seat at the table, that it's so upfront in all the thinking. It's not, something that happens after a whole bunch of data and strategy happens. It's kind of happening in parallel and really woven into all of our processes. The other thing we've done is we've created like high ambition. So for the agency itself, we have really ambitious goals, even in terms of awards. And I know there's, different feelings and critique about awards shows and participating, but we still, especially for the creative commerce category, we've really created a strong ambition to want to lead the industry and to pioneer kind of new types of creativity, and then be focused about that. So we found with young talent that that ambition from the agency is infectious for them, so they can feel more ambitious personally, that there's that tie and linkage between success, and that then having a strong point of view and a focus as an agency, I think has helped too, because it's given people a feeling of being able to major, if you will, in not trying to do everything, but trying to get very specific on kind of pioneering, which I think is also something that's, interesting and exciting for a lot of really great talent. And then I think the last point is just what your programs are all about, being able to give people other outlets, recognizing that all of us, we're seeing that during kind of this COVID time, as creative individuals, you just start to find all these different outlets of things that, I've been making way more than I had before, maybe because you have a different kind of time balance on your hands, and you even cooking. But your creative juices flow is, I think, part of also how we fulfill ourselves, especially during very difficult times where there's an anxiety level too that you're trying to process. And I think giving creatives a sense that they can have side hustles and they can have their side passions met, and there's other ways of getting their work out there, and celebrating all of their work is, I think, really important to in a creative organization and environment. Like, you just have to let them have all the outlets that a creative person needs. They can't feel boxed in, even if they feel like you've kind of got to focus attention to the creative product of your own agency.
Totally agree.
Totally agree. Yeah. I've got a slight follow-up question for you, Beth Ann. Your agency deals with commerce, and obviously retail, retail and even the e-commerce space have had to navigate some tricky waters over the course of the year. Does that raise the bar on what it means to be creative, to, not just get people to get out of the house and, and go to a shopping mall, or, just even navigate what's become such a crowded space of e-retailers, since that space has had to mature fairly quickly. And I'm sure you could chime in too, Pete.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. It also gives brands a chance to express brand in new ways than they ever thought of before. It allows them to see that these channels or these moments with the consumer is a chance for the brand to create true stickiness and connectivity to the consumer in a way that they didn't engage necessarily before creatively. They may have someone else in the business owned it, but not necessarily the CMO, the marketers, or the creatives. And then I think the other, for an organization like ourselves, is it allows us to address the opportunity in new ways. So an example of a product would be handle and hygiene, which is a shopping cart handle. It can also be used at airports for the carts that you push with your luggage, that allows you to swipe really quickly the handle and sanitize it very quickly and know that you're all set, and it's just built into the system. Like, that was an idea that was conceived by us on behalf of retailers and brands, but would typically not be necessarily the way your creativity would live in the world. And now it kind of opens up the way we would think about the types of ideas that we can bring to our clients.
Right. Yeah, I've probably got like one question for the both of you left. Again, thank you for having these moments. Pete, I know out in LA, you are, speaking of side passions and hustles, there's this project called 100 Pieces that you work on out there. I'd love for this audience to know a little bit more about it.
So it's funny because it's like the show that you just talked about in the opening. 100 Pieces was a very simple idea. As I said, I went to SVA to be a painter. Somehow I ended up here. I have no idea how, but it happened. But I wasn't going to school to be in advertising, and here I am. So 5 years ago, my wife, Amy, Melissa Ross, who is a rep. She's got Melissa Ross Represents, and her husband, Chris Buzzle. The four of us had an idea to, and this was six years ago, to hold a art auction of art made by people in the business, creatives or agency people in the business out here in LA. My wife more so than I do, volunteers at a safe place for youth, which is a homeless shelter for youth in Venice. And there's 10,000 youth in LA that don't have homes, and we wanted to help them. So we just figured, hey, what if we pulled together a bunch of art from people in the community, and we'll probably get maybe 100 pieces, and that's why I called it that. And then we'll have this art show, and then we'll give all the proceeds to Safe Place for Youth. So we had no idea that how much interest there would be. So the first year, I think we got 400 pieces, and we didn't really have enough space to hang all that art. So we had to stack it on top in this little gallery that we had in Santa Monica. And we were on our 5th year this year, and it's grown every year to where not only is it people in our business, advertising and production, but now it's gone into full blown, like Shepard Fairey now gives to us every year. Mark Stollinger does, Jake Scott, Michelle Gondry. And it's turned into a full blown art event where we had about 1,200 people last time, and we move it over into Steelhead Studios at Deutsch. And we generate, we were the largest contributor to Safe Place for Youth for the 4 years. The fifth year of this year, we had to postpone it because of COVID. But it's amazing to see the talent that's out there, the talent of people who are everyday art directors that come in and I work on my business, but no one knows on the side that I'll use Chuck Blackwell as an example, who's an art director of Ruben Foster, that he's an amazing painter. And I've always told Chuck, it's like you could be doing Time magazine covers. And, you know, with all due respect to RPA, they're amazing. But here's an amazingly talented guy who goes to work, he makes his income on his art direction for his clients, but his artwork is amazing. And I look at him as well as hundreds of other people out here in LA have contributed as a way to get them to exercise that other muscle. A lot of us in art school, and I'll wrap up here, always said to ourselves, well, our work will never be good enough to be in the art world. So we kind of put it aside and go into the commercial arts, not realizing that maybe we should have stayed with our passion of fine arts. Maybe we should have done that. So it gives people that outlet, and it's been highly successful, especially for Safe Place for Youth, because God knows they need the money and they need our help. But for other people, it's so nice to see that the last show we had, I hang up all the, Chris and I hang up all the work, we hang it all, and we don't put names on it. So you don't know if it's a Shepard Fairey piece, although his work is pretty distinguishable. But you've got a junior art director next to a Shepard Fairey piece. And that junior art director came up to me and said, this is like the best day of my life. My piece of art is sitting right next to Shepard Fairey's in the gallery. I never would have thought this would happen. That the feeling that you get is unbelievable. And all knowing it's for a good cause, and it's a fantastic night. So yeah, it's 100pieces.org. We plan on firing it up as soon as this pandemic passes, and we look forward to the future of it. We've been asked to do it in other cities. We just don't know how yet.
Hey, you never know. Maybe one of these artists from the Ad Art Show may contribute. And
absolutely, please.
Beth Ann, speaking of, you know, people who have contributed to the Ad Art Show, it seems as if you have 3 artists representing the Geometry Network. You know, how does it feel being a, you know, agency executive, knowing that there is this this contribution, you know, kind of people being able to put their creativity on such a display like the one in the Westfield Oculus?
Oh, super proud. I mean, it's one of those things that also is reciprocal. It just generates such inspiration for other people to see it. It helps them be noticed and admired and recognized in ways that matter really to them. And to be able to contribute and make it possible for them to do that is really what it's all about, being in this industry. So we hope to just make it more next year. And we hope people that are showing their art continue to get recognized in broader contexts. I'll do a shout out to my hometown of Baltimore, Maryland. They have this amazing museum, which may not be the one of the first 3 that you would visit going there if you get the chance to, but it's called the American Visionary Museum. And they recognize work often posthumously to people who are unknown, but they found their art when they passed away. And now, of course, they are recognizing living artists, but it's people who used art to save their lives, if you will. You know, it was their way of coping with really difficult lives. And any of us who are creative know that so much of what fuels creativity are sometimes, you know, the pains that happen along with our lives. And it's just a way of channeling some of that, you know, energy and passion as well. And this museum shows it in its best, biggest way. I'm sure you can see so many of the exhibitions online as well. But that's the one to keep, if you're listening to this and you're a young artist, to keep in mind too, either to visit for inspiration or to contribute to. I'm sure they're taking works from, would be more than happy to meet a lot of the artists that are in the audience. So yeah, I would just say that I think the blurring of the lines between how we used to think about creativity and arts and art, being artistic in general is very much happening right now. And so I think broadening the aperture of the possibility, just like Pete's own story about how his career kind of has unfolded, now coming full circle, being able to create like a organization like 100 Pieces and serve that kind of community. There's nothing more rewarding than that. But I think we're going to see a lot more of that happening across our industry. So as much as sometimes we get the negative headlines about what's happening in the ad industry, I think we're both here to say that it's flourishing in so many ways. And I think that avenue of artistic being contributing reciprocally to the arts is a big part of that.
So true.
Yeah, and it's not lost on me that, most of these artists who are, represented in this show are using literal advertising space for their art to be displayed. So, quick shout out to the MVVO art team. Thank you again for allowing this sort of platform for creative ambassadors like Beth Ann and like Pete. Do want to give a special shout out to one of the Ad Art Show partners in SVA. So they are making sure to represent. So yeah, for everybody who has been watching today, thank you again. And you'll see me back on your screens on Thursday with a couple more creative ambassadors. And until then, make sure you stay tuned for Debbie Wells's talk tomorrow around this time. Take care. Thank you both.
Thank you, Bennett. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Beth Ann, Pete, and Bennett for today's great conversation, and thank you all for joining us on today's live stream. Make sure you tune in on Tuesdays and Thursdays for the next interviews in Bennett's series, Creativity Ambassadors in the Ad Industry. All POV interviews will be available for viewing on mvvoart.com and on MVVOart's YouTube channel. We encourage you all to tune in tomorrow for the next live Lunchtime POV series, Secrets of Successful Collecting, hosted by Debbie Wells of Artful Circle, featuring Candy Corman, writer, MVVO art, and art collector. I encourage everyone to go to our website and view our fundraiser and purchase a commemorative branded t-shirt to support Hitty Harvest during Hunger Action Month. Make sure to visit the Oculus at the Westworld Trade Center if you are able to see the Ad Art Show 2020 come to life on the screens. Make sure you stop by Italy for a free coffee and dessert. Thank you all, and we'll see you tomorrow.